have a little bit of an introduction and chat on WAN 470s and the mini bid all combined together. And we will be recording it just in case you would like a copy of it later to reference back. And so I will go ahead and share screen here. And if you have any questions, my amazing coworkers will be monitoring the chat and making sure that I don't accidentally miss your question. So if you would like to follow along, I'll leave this up here for a second. And there's the Go NC DPI link. And also, if you want to scan it with your phone for the QR code and then share that with yourself as well, I'll leave that up there for about 30 seconds. That way you can go ahead and bring that up. All right, and I will advance along and we will, I'll let Corey just check on that, make sure in case we need to admit one more. We had one more. Perfect. All right. And I will actually, if someone could put the link to the presentation in the chat, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Corey. And we'll get started. Maybe. All right, so we'll talk about today's objectives first, which is to go into detail on the resources available for you guys, since we are steadily approaching and fastly getting into funding year 25 for E-rate, and provide an overview and the list of resources for you guys who are going to be specifically filing a 470 and the mini bid. And then if you have any questions, we'll make sure that we get those answered for you or take them back. And you know that you can always set up a meeting later with us if you would like. All right, here's your team. All four of us are on the call today. Unfortunately, the blue circle is not here today, but you've got Dr. McNeil, Sue, myself, and Sabrina, your amazing NCDPI E-rate team. And here's a nice link that we always like to plug in. This is the DTL Hub, and this is a great resource to get all kinds of information, everything digital teaching and learning. And then, of course, we have our website as well in conjunction with the DTL Hub to help you. And so first chapter, I guess you could call it, is the WAN and the Form 470. And so as a quick high-level overview, the 470 serves as almost like the procurement vehicle for E-rate. And so you go in, you file your Form 470, and that's telling all the vendors what it is that you are looking for. And you can go in, list all of the requirements, what you're looking for. Typically that is available on July 1, but as I'm sure you guys, if you've been keeping up with all the changes, there are new things that have been eligible last year and this year. So they delayed that 470 just a little bit, but as of the past few weeks, it is out and available for funding year 25. And basically all of the vendors go in, some of them have tools that auto download for them or anything like that. Basically they get what you put in there and you say, I want XY project. They take that, they get it, and then they submit a bid to you in response to what it is you're looking for. And one note here that we always encourage is inside the E-rate portal, we always encourage to attach an RFP, which means a separate document may not necessarily be what you think of as an RFP in your PSU. An RFP in Form 470 speak is any attachment that specifically lists out your requirements and what you're looking for. Sometimes trying to put it in that narrative can make it look kind of icky, and especially if you have tables, charts, lists of your sites. If you're a district with 60 schools, you don't want to try to stuff everything in that narrative. You want to get everything nice and lined up in a PDF. Then you can just go ahead and upload it in your 470. So that's something we always recommend doing as well. All right, so for a WAN, if you are a district or a charter, if you have an existing WAN contract and your end date is approaching. So if your end date is 6/30/2025, right now is going to be when you're starting to look and say, all right, I need to get that 470 out. I need to get my RFP written. I need to get all the updates that I need to get done to get that put out. The only exception would be if your main contract is 6/30/2025 and you have any voluntary extensions. So your current contract or your E-rate coordinator should be able to help you make sure you understand whether you do have any extensions. But if you are out of those voluntary extensions, something else to think about that's coming up. And then if you are a charter where you either have or are adding a second, maybe a third site that is at a different address. So if it's on the same campus, that's different. But if you're a charter and you have rented a building 5 miles down the road, 3 miles down the road, we're going to be talking to you about adding that 470 for a WAN. As I kind of mentioned, plan for October now or this fall of the year before your contract expires. So if you got an extension into 2026, let's hang out in a year. Unless you want to talk about it now, we can always talk about it, but you'll officially file next year in that example. Just a couple other reminders we like to make sure that we tell you. Make sure you plan for extra time for your board review and approval. This is a big contract. It's going to be something that is a serious. It's a multi-year contract. It's going to be a high dollar amount. That's not going to be something that you're going to be able to do in a vacuum by yourself, more than likely. So make sure that you plan extra time to make sure that it goes to your superintendent, your head of school, and your school board, and make sure you've got enough time to get all the signatures and all the eyes on it that need to be able to approve that. The reason why we say have extra time is because before you file that Form 471 in that filing window that we talk about, that's January to March, you've got to have that contract signed before you put in that 471. So you can't file a 471 and then be like, oh, let me get some signatures later. You want to make sure we get all that buttoned up before you go ahead and file during the filing window. Of course, we're help, yes, and we're here to help. So reach out to us if you have any questions. Here's a nice little infographic as well. So in addition to the WAN, if you are going to be requesting bus Wi-Fi equipment or service, I should say, the newly eligible mobile hotspot program this year, or you want something in category 2 that is not on our state master contracts, or you don't prefer to use the vendors, that's of course completely up to you, but those are all instances where you'll have to file a 470, and that's where you would basically sidestep the mini bid process and you would go start to finish E-rate process. And so kind of one of the first tips I've already talked about is attaching an RFP, and then most of you guys at the PSU level will probably only file the 470 for your WAN unless it's some of those other things like bus Wi-Fi or your mobile hotspots or one of the other conditions or scenarios where you want to go off the contract. And for category 2, most of you guys do use those state master contracts, which means you don't have to file a 470 in order to do that. We've done that work for you. You're welcome. And so that's where we've done the 470 process. We received all the bids for the contracts we have now, that's 36, and we narrowed down, we awarded. That's where you do that mini bid process that makes it a lot easier on you, and you just email all the folks. Of course, we'll talk about the mini bid after this, but those are some of the scenarios and tips that we've got for you. And so this is another good infographic of some important tips for actually filing your 470. So the first one is disqualifying factors. So you're going to want to put disqualification factors in your RFP to disqualify bids. So you can't disqualify a bid without it fitting into the factors that you put in. So a prime example would be no emailed bids will be accepted. If someone emails you a bid, that's a specific way to disqualify that bids. And in North Carolina, we have the sealed bid. So we always recommend having your bids either dropped off by hand, stayed sealed, mailed, and then they stay sealed. That's 100% way to say they're sealed. You have a public bid opening. So you don't want to get them emailed to you. That's a way to say any emailed bids. That also helps with spam bids, because if you are receiving emails every other day that are auto-generated saying only non-emailed bids can be accepted, that's how you can disqualify those spam bids. And leading into the next one, which is disqualification factors and evaluation criteria. So a disqualification factor is something that you predetermined in your RFP that said this bid is not a viable bid to even evaluate. And then your evaluation criteria, which of course, as we know in E-rate, is price is the primary factor. It may be prior experience, technical sufficiency. Those are all evaluation criteria, price, all those things. So those are what you evaluate viable bids on after you've used your disqualification factors to rule out any bids that are not viable to be evaluated. And the next one is the 28 days. E-rate rules state 28 days. We here at NCDPI like to tell you wait at least 30. That way there's no question, there's no worry that you were 5 minutes or 23 hours before what we call the allowable contract date. Wait the 30 days, just make sure you do that. It's safer. You just don't want to put yourself in a position to have USAC come back and audit you or tell you that your contract is not valid. Wait those couple extra days. And another tip that's on there is on your RFP, be sure to specify when a bid is due by. So make sure it's at least 30 days. So if you put it out on November 1st, specify in your RFP bids are due by December 1st. Make sure that you give that solid end date and put a time. So make sure you say November 1st at 5 p.m. That way, somebody can't come back and say, I delivered it at 5:01 p.m. You didn't have a time specified. You didn't have a date specified. You want to make sure you're as specific as possible, because vendors are vying for your business. That's how they stay in business, and they can get competitive. So we want to make sure that we're keeping ourselves all as far above the board as possible. Next one is the bidding. So make sure that you have multiple people at your bid opening and make sure that they sign in. These contracts, especially in a 470, like I said, they're going to be high dollar. You are not going to want to have just yourself on that evaluation team. Have 2, 3, 4 people. Make sure that there are enough people so that if you're in an audit, if you're being reviewed by PIA or any of the other types of USAC audits where they're looking at this, you're staying as far above board as you can. You've got multiple people who weighed in on this decision, and that keeps the decision solid in your favor that this was a properly bid 470. Everything looks good. And make sure that your evaluation matrix is solid as well. Don't make price 30 points and technical sufficiency 29 points. Keep enough of a spread that price sits way up at the top. Price is king, queen, they're at the very top, and then make your other factors, which are important, but make sure that they don't sit right next to price. And on top of that, don't make your spread, say you've got a bid for 100,000 and a bid for 200,000. Don't make them 30 points and 29 points. Don't make them, if they're $100 apart, don't score them 20 points apart. And we can get into that if I just confused you a little bit. Just make sure that you are evaluating to where your successor, and the successor to your successor can go in and defend and easily be able to identify why you chose the factors, that they fit in with the E-rate rules, and that they're defendable in case of an audit. We all know the forever rule, but remember, 10 to 11 years down the line, you can have that audited and you want it to be solid for them. Selection criteria, they actually ties hand in hand, and price is the highest weight. Don't forget to don't make another factor super close in weight. Just talked about that. And then the other item at the bottom, it used to be called many years cardinal change. Now USAC is using substantive change as well. They're both the similar thing. Just remember those two words together. It's any change in your RFP that is deemed significant, cardinal, substantive, significant, if it changes the scope. If you put out an RFP and then your superintendent says, hey, we're going to build a whole new campus with 5 new schools, that's a substantive change. You're going to want to go, you're going to edit your RFP, you're going to restart that 28, 30 days. So make sure you know any change that you feel like all the vendors have to know. All the vendors have to be on a level playing field. They have to all have the same information. There could be no evidence, no even appearance that you're showing favoritism to 1 or 2 vendors. You want to make sure everybody's has the same information. When in doubt, restart that timer. That's why we encourage you to start now, because hey, things happen. You may have made a typo. You may, oh shoot, I forgot that school. Anything that's a substantive change, reset. We can help you do that. Here are some of the resources. So we've got the forms assistance page, and there's a couple RFP guidance timelines, things to help you along the way. And just as kind of a reminder, these are examples we give you. We are here to help you come along the way, but we cannot be on your evaluation team. You've got to tailor any examples that we give that are specific to your needs. We just give, best practices. We've been doing this, once or twice. So we have some best practices. We hear things from USAC and everything. We want to give you all the tools we have, but know that it's not an exhaustive list. All right. Any questions? I'm going to give 30 seconds just in case. Some of my folks on my calls have teacher brain. I have sometimes the talks a lot, throw it all out brain. So I'm going to make sure I give everyone a chance. If they have any questions on RFPs, 470s, WANs.
So far, Adam, I'm not sure if the folks know where the chat is, but there's nothing in the chat because I did
All
invite
right.
them to beat up on Sabrina and I while you were chatting.
Thank you. All right. Well, we are going to shift a bit from talking about 470s and WAN category 1. We're going to shift into the category 2 as sort of a high level reminder again. This is your inside the building items. This is your switches, racks, cabling, access points, UPS in eligible situations, all that kind of fun stuff. So again, as a kind of an overview, when you do the category 2 mini bid, you are choosing to basically hang out with our decisions and our process at DPI. We filed the 470, we evaluated bids, we got a set of bidders, we have what are called state master contracts that allow you to bypass the process I just talked about, and you use the mini bid and you email every single vendor. You write down the project you're looking to do for category 2. They take it, they read it, they send you a quote back, and you don't have to go through all that other process. And I may have put it on here, but if not, this process allows you to also receive that undiscounted portion from us in your PRC 036 or 073. Using the NCDPI master contracts allows you to receive that. If you don't use the state master contracts, that's where you don't unfortunately receive that undiscounted portion. Just want to make sure I always remind that. So just kind of a quick review, your timeline right now, soon. By the end of this training, you can go to our website and you can download the mini bid documents. As soon as I am done talking at you guys today, they will go up on that website. And step one of the most important parts for when you do begin this process is one, have the documents. So we'll give those to you. That next one's going to be to perform your needs assessment. So here's just some typical best practices or thing, like I said, advice we like to give that you don't have to take. If it's over 5 years old, you've got to keep it running for 5 years. If your equipment's over 5 years old, you can replace it. Something else to check is when do your right to use licenses? So we all know you buy an access point, you got to buy that right to use license to keep it in your management portal to keep it going. If you purchased 3 years of licensing, you can go ahead and file for just the licensing. You can file a mini bid for just the licensing on that equipment. And just as something we like to note, sometimes the access point technology tends to maybe move a little bit faster or come out with new latest and greatest a little bit more than switches. So just a quick tip in case you're looking at how to best utilize your budget, or if you have to kind of do phases. And then remember your wiring. So if you've got Cat 5 wiring or anything below that even, in some of your schools maybe that are a little bit older, you haven't gotten a chance to refresh yet, don't forget that if you go and buy Wi-Fi 7 access points, they're probably not going to run the best if your cabling is really old. So something else to kind of think about that. And of course, CNE at MCNC, the 11 letters plus punctuation in there that we suggest to you, they'll come out, no charge. They'll help you determine that needs assessment that you need and to make sure that you have everything that you need for your Cat 2 project. What about the services? So we have two different types of services available to help maintain your Category 2 equipment: basic maintenance and MIBs. So BMIC MIBs. Don't forget, if those are things that you are looking to do, don't forget to include that in your mini bid and your needs assessment. Make sure you know what it is that you need. And again, we can help you if you need, help determining, hey, do I need BMIC? Do I need MIBs? Do I need both? Do I need neither? All those things. You do have to know, your budget. How much can I spend? If you have $26, you might not be able to get all your schools done. If you have $1 million, you might be able to get everything you need done. So we've got two different ways to get your budget. And so I'll show you our friends at NCSU at the Friday Institute have created this amazing budget. Let's see if my computer wants to load today. Well, we're getting there. Here we go. So this is a district. If you would like to roll over, if you are a county school or a district, you can roll right over. You can see that information right there. So we're rolling over folks here. And so there's the total budget available. Or if you are a charter or would like to see it a little bit more specifically, you can click up here at budget available by PSU. And here's some folks that have a higher budget. It's kind of done in this cool little infographic. Or you can go over here and you can uncheck and you can check just yourself. If whoever you are, it'll pop up with your information there. So there's a fun way to check it. Or the other way is to use your Category 2 budget tool straight from USAC. And I'll give you a quick overview just because we want to make sure you can utilize it. If you know your Ben by heart, kudos to you. Or in this case, I may not know everyone's Ben, so I'll just choose somebody here to pick on, Union County, and we'll pick public schools since we want to narrow it down. You will have to type in, click on this right here, and then you do have to click apply in blue. Once you do that, you'll see here you can roll over. There's the C2 budget, there's the funded, there's the available. You can export up here. You can view down here. You can see how many students it shows, the multiplier, all that information. And so there are two different ways you can check out the important part of having a budget. All right, and some other things to kind of ask yourself and some reminders from us. Remember what kind of features you want. technical specifications, wireless standard, how many radios in your access point, how many ports do you need on a switch, how many SF ports do I need? Do you have any weak coverage areas that you know about? During testing, do you have a cluster of teachers who, hey, we're getting kicked off? Now is a great time to go in and make sure that you've got any weak areas. Outdoor learning became a thing. It's popular, especially with COVID. Think about something like that. If you have some outdoor classrooms to get your kids outside and learning in the gorgeous weather. And here's a big one that we will probably be telling you a lot. Remember any upcoming construction, if you're moving schools, if you're moving addresses, if you're a charter, any upcoming things that you know you've got. Let's work on a plan to make sure that you've got everything you need to do and in a timeline that works for you. And of course, fits within the yearly E-rate cycle. So some purple reminders here. Don't forget that SFP transceivers, stacking cables, those are eligible items. That way you don't have to take that out of your local budget if you don't want to. Access points and switching equipment. As long as you're not buying switches just for phones, just for security cameras, remember that's a no-no. But switches for access points, those are easy things that always eligible. There's not gray areas. Easy. Remember the E-rate does not fund spares, backups, redundancy. You can't buy 100 access points and keep 20 of them on the shelf in case something happens. You can't buy new access points for something you just bought a year ago because you don't like them. You can't have any redundancy, unfortunately. And just remember not to overdo it. These are federal funds. They're DPI funds for the undiscounted. In a data closet that just services 10 drops, don't buy a 48 port switch and put it in there. Don't install an AP all over the place to where it's oversaturated. Make sure that you're getting what you need, but not going over abound it. Be mindful of the cabling guardrails. I'm not going to get too far into that, but just remember that you can't go and bid out a whole new security system and then install it in every one of your schools, and that's the only thing that it's being used for with E-rate dollars. And just remember too, for your districts, that your non-instructional facilities are not eligible for Cat 2 funding. So another kind of plug-in and a reminder there. All right, we've talked about reminders. We've talked kind of on the intro. Here's right here where you can get our information menu. Again, like I said, after this training, that will be available there. Mini bid template. You're going to hear us say this all the time. It's one of our favorite things to tell you. Don't download it today, and then in 2 or 3 months, oops, I forgot to get out that mini bid. Come to this website right when you're ready to send it out. It has to have the latest version. Sue can attest to this. All of us can attest to this. You can and might get asked, what's the version? They want to make sure that you are emailing the most updated list and all the people on that mini bid. You've got to have all those email addresses. If there's a discrepancy, we do not want that. So don't download it today right after you get off with us and then wait 3 months to go ahead and send it out. Make sure that you download that day. You're ready to go. I've said it and I'll say it again. It's in bold. You've got to email all the vendors. It's on tab 3. Make sure all the people. The template is right there on instructions. I even kind of put it here in case you want a visual. Here's something else to remember. Save your sent email. As soon as you send that email, please BCC. We've all been a member of the accidental reply all. Make sure you BCC. As soon as you send it, go into your sent, double click that message in your sent, make sure that it shows all the addresses in the BCC, file, save, print as a PDF, put that right in your E-rate documentation, put it under mini bid, FY25, make sure that you've got that because that is one of the most important things to make sure that you have in this process is that you emailed everyone and you have proof you emailed everyone. This is pretty foolproof to make sure you have that. What if I get questions? Similar to the 470, anything that changes the scope of the project, resend it. If you find out that you've got to double your access points, resend it out to everybody. Don't just tell a couple people who may have already sent you bids. If you don't get any bids, you can send a reminder. You can extend your date if you're not over. Make sure that those are things you remember that you can resend. You just can't go during that time and just kind of pick and choose who you want to reach out to and say, hey, I didn't get any bids yet. Can you bid for me? Make sure that you send a reminder to everyone, include everyone. Don't look like favorites. If you get one bid, whether it's the one you wanted, if it fits your scope, if it fits your environment, if it's a bid that works for you, I should say, even if it's not, or if it is, you have to use that bid. If the bid is from someone that you had a horrible experience with, that's the only bid you have. You can choose not to move forward and try again next year, but you can't pick up the phone to another vendor and say, hey, can you send me, I know you're on the list. Can you send me? You can't do that. And last kind of check is make sure that your bids, check them against your project scope. Make sure you're descriptive in your project scope. Mistakes happen. These vendors are getting hundreds of requests from all over the state and really from all over the country. They may typo, they may put the wrong thing. Check to make sure if you ask for 48 port switches, make sure that they're not sending you 24 SFP port switches instead. You can reach out to a vendor who did not accurately quote to your scope. Make sure you save the emails. You could reach out, say, hey, vendor, you only quoted me 10 switches. I need 100. Save the email. Save the email they send you back with a revised quote. Save both quotes. We're going to tell you to save everything. Something else to remember is give them a hard date to send you a revised quote by. This is similar to a 470. If you email and say, hey, vendor, can you get me a revised quote for 100 switches? You accidentally quoted 10. If it's on a Tuesday and your end date or your evaluation date is on a Friday, they haven't gotten back to you. They may email you a week later. Here you go. You're going to go back and say, well, I already did my evaluation. And they're going to come back and they're going to say, well, we didn't have a date. If you say, I need to have the revised quote by Friday at 4 p.m., if it's 4:30 and you do your evaluation and they have not sent you a new revised quote, you're going to score accordingly based on the fact that they did not give you what it is that you are looking for in your evaluation. But you have hard evidence that it's not going to be able to be contested. We're going to tell you this again. These are the biggies. Make sure your evaluation notes are super specific when you do that mini bid evaluation. You want the person who replaces you, who replaced you, to be able to support, easily read it. Discuss your score for each of your evaluation criteria for every vendor who gave you a quote. I got some little, here's the notes. Maybe it's vendor 3. There's your score. Here's just an example. There's price. Staff is not familiar with the brand, so technical sufficiency, technical support, vendor experience, ineligible costs, single source. This paragraph touches on every evaluation criteria and gives an explanation of the point value. Make sure that you do that for every one of the evaluation criteria for every quote you received. Oh, wow, that was quickly done. Okay. Any other questions anyone has on any of the things that we talked about today? If you do think of any questions later on, we are here, schedule with us. It's getting to be that busy season where we're gearing up and we are getting ready to make this an easy process for you as much as we can. We'll hang on for a few minutes in case we get any questions.
All right, I know John must have a question or two. He's kind of new to this.
Okay.
Looks
All
like
right.
we have a question from Cindy. If we are still under our current contract for our WAN, do we have to file a 470 for this year?
You would not, but you will file a 471. So a 470 is only when you're up for a new contract, but the 471 is each year of that contract. So no 470, just 471. And if anyone does have any questions, like I'd mentioned about when's it expire? Do I have any extensions? When do I need to get with you? Reach out to us. We're happy to kind of help you evaluate when you do need to file a 470. Then you can put it on your calendar. Oh, John's got his hand up, I think. I do see that on my screen.
So I do have a question. I've got a school that is building a new building, and it's going to be a rough process of moving, or a very short time frame of moving from one to the other. Can we use E-rate funds to take access points down and rehang those access points over in another building? And how would that fall?
Come on, Samantha, join us.
Cat 2?
Or Sabrina. Let's do the bobbleheads together.
Whee!
So how would that fall in Cat 2?
John, what side of the state are you on?
It's the east.
Yeah.
Give me a buzz and we'll work together on that, because I currently have, as an example, Pamlico is using their C2 to move their middle and high school access points and switches to their new building. So it can be done. It's a fugly looking mini bid, but it can get done.
Any other questions?
Adam, I just want also just popped in my brain when you were thinking
Sure.
about that the awarding of that, and I was searching for the state board code policy. I can't find it offhand, but making sure to check your local school board's policy on the dollar amount.
Very true.
Because
thank you for that.
It will, depending on the project and the size, may still require local board approval. And you want to consider that in the timeline of awarding and doing all of that. So I'm blanking on the number, but there is a policy number. Check your school board policy on the dollar amount, and that's set at the local level. So when I was in the PSU, it was $70,000. So I knew that any project that we were doing over that dollar amount, E-rate or not, had to go before the board. So just make sure, like I said, you're considering that when you're going through this process as well.
And that actually is a great point as well that I will expand a little bit on, is E-rate rules state that not only do you have E-rate rules, but you also have to abide by your state and local procurement laws. So that's a perfect kind of segue into that if you at the local level have certain stipulations, make sure that you're abiding by all of the multiple levels of compliance to make sure you're fitting into all those. All right. I think if my team members agree, we can give you back 17 minutes of your day today. We thank you very much for coming to hang out and join with us and hang out. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to us and let us know. Thank you guys very much.